Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalists of Chelmsford. We are a covenantal community gathered for worship, mutual care, faith formation through spiritual learning and ethical discernment, and in service to the common good. I extend a special welcome to anyone visiting us for the first time. We are glad you joined us today. You can learn more or contact us via our website, uuchelmsford.org, or email dre@uuchelmsford.org. I am Amy Hughes, and I'm a member of the worship committee. Leading the service today is Brian Snow, as our minister, Alan Spiro, has a well-deserved day off. Also leading the service today is Steve Zaki, our music director, Carla Corey, who will be offering our chalice lighting and our covenant. Caroline Snow is our greeter. Dave Caffeine and Nancy Kalin are our ushers, and Diana Cohane is running our live stream tech. Our worship services are multi-platform, with people attending in the sanctuary and from home. If you are attending from home, Elliot Mayer is our online chat host. If you wish to join in the online chat, you need to join our worship service via the YouTube link on our website and log into your Google account. If you are attending in the sanctuary, be aware that the service is being live streamed and recorded to post to our website later. The ushers can help you with finding seating that is not within the view of the camera. However you are joining us, we are so glad that you are here from wherever you are. Please take a moment to say hello to each other. A reminder to please wear your name tags again. After 2 years of almost no in-person services, some of us need help in connecting names with masked faces. We will have our social hour online after the service, hosted today by Terry Ralbowski. We will provide the Zoom link at the end. We also have opened the vestry for people to gather for socializing after the service, although we are not serving food or beverages at this time. We are? Oh, we are today. I take that back. Okay. Okay. I do have a couple of announcements. This is coming from the Canvas team. Our Canvas team is grateful for the strong response they've received in the first 3 weeks of our stewardship drive. They'd like to thank the 76 members and friends of First Parish who've already submitted their pledge. Submitting your pledge online couldn't be easier. That said, please do take a moment before submitting your pledge to consider what for you is a generous and fair donation or share. Our stewardship drive is rolling right along, and that's a very good thing because it gives our treasurer, Diana Cohane, and our financial team the weeks they need to consider budget options and plenty of time for our annual June meeting. And I've also got an announcement from the auction. The auction team would like to let you know that a little over $11,000, a record setter, was the revenue that came in. They'd like to thank all who helped, from the auction team to tech team to auctioneers to the donors to the bidders, for everyone's generosity. And that is all I've got for announcements.
Okay. It's been a long time. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Carla Corey, and it's great to see some new faces today, so welcome. In lighting the chalice this morning, I would like to lift up the memory of Jolene Dubner, a woman who was passionate about many things, but especially the outdoors, parks, and her adopted city of Lowell. She was an original incorporator of the Lowell Parks and Recreation Trust, commonly referred to as LPCT. After her untimely death in 1994 at the age of only 35, LPCT and the City of Lowell, working with funds given in her memory, created the Jolene Dubner Park on the Concord River. Friends in her hometown of Rochester, New York, sent 14 lilac bushes, and a childhood friend from second grade sent a special tree from a Native American reservation on the St. Lawrence River. Her mother, Nancy Dubner, was quoted as saying that Jolene's Park opened up that neighborhood. In the years since the park was dedicated in 2000, several memorial benches have been added and many plantings. The newest enhancements are a berry patch and a pollinator garden on the lower area along the river. Reverend Ellen wrote in her Shooting Star Reflections column this month that our Soul Matters theme for April is awakening. She goes on to say that it is a great theme for the springtime of the year and for moving through a chaotic time that is awakening us to all kinds of revelations about how we are connected to one another and to the creation that surrounds us. This would be reason enough to reflect on the life and work of Jolene Dubner. But there is another. She was a member of First Parish. I started attending here in January of 1995, 2 months after her death, so our paths never crossed. But several years ago, another one of our members, Jean Thompson, made the wonderful suggestion that we do a split the plate for LPCT. And from that seed, pun intended, evolved a tradition of gathering volunteers for a Jolene Dubner Park cleanup every spring and inserting a line item in our budget toward the park's upkeep. It's a way of honoring both Jolene's memory and the ways we are connected to one another and to the creation that surrounds us. I hope you will consider joining us as you are able on April 24th for this year's cleanup. But know that just by supporting First Parish through your pledges, you are supporting this oasis of natural beauty that benefits our greater community. I will ask Brian to light the chalice now in celebration of that beauty. Thanks. Now, I ask you to join me in our covenant, the words during the order of worship. And like Rick did last week and Diana the week before, I'm going to try to alternate Spanish and English lines. But it would help if everybody joined in. We, the members of First Parish, covenant together to sustain and strengthen our beloved community by nosotros, los miembros de la primera parroquia de Chelmsford, convenimos juntos a sostener y fortalecer nuestra amada comunidad, honoring and celebrating the spirit of life, honrando y celebrando el espíritu de la vida, nurturing all souls in our search for truth and the sacred, nutriendo todo almas emboscada de la verdad y lo sagrado, caring and being present to one another in our joys and sorrows, cuidar y estar presentes al uno y otro en nuestras alegrías y tristezas, bearing witness through service to justice and peace, dar testimonio mediante servicio a la justicia y paz, and being good stewards of our congregation, our heritage, our Unitarian Universalist principles, and our earth, y ser buenos cuidadores de nuestra congregación, nuestra herencia, nuestros principios unitarios, universalistas, y la tierra. Thank you. Okay.
Good morning. At this part of the service, we take time to reflect on what this congregation means to us and how we can share our gratitude. If you wish to make a donation, there is a basket by the sanctuary door in which you can place a donation after the service. You can also donate online through the church website. Let us now reflect on how we can share and give back to this community as Steve plays our offertory. Thank you, Steve. So for anyone who does not know me, my name is Brian Snow. I am filling in today for Reverend Ellen, who's on retreat. It is my privilege to be able to deliver the sermon today as a member of this congregation. This community means so much to me. And it is not lost on me that the theme for this Sunday is Awakening, which is also the first Sunday in quite a while when we have been able to have a coffee hour. Well, the first reading is a story that has been morphed over time through oral tradition and shows up in a variety of different cultures, although it is most often attributed to Rabbi Chaim Avram Shishak. It is the allegory of the spoons. Rabbi Chaim Avram Shishak was an itinerant preacher who traveled from town to town speaking about mutual respect. And so here is one version of Rabbi Hayim of Ramsesak's allegory of the spoons. He says, I once ascended to the firmament. I first went to see hell, and the sight was horrifying. Row after row of tables were laden with platters of sumptuous food. Yet the people seated around the tables were pale and emaciated, moaning in hunger. As I came closer, I understood their predicament. Every person held a full spoon, but both arms were splinted with wooden slats, so they could not bend either elbow to bring the food to their mouths. It broke my heart to hear the tortured groans of these poor people as they held their food so near, but could not consume it. Next, I went to visit heaven. I was surprised to see the same setting I had witnessed in hell. Row after row of long tables laden with food. But in contrast, the people here in heaven were sitting contentedly, talking with each other, obviously satisfied by their sumptuous meal. As I came closer, I was amazed to discover that here too, each person had their arms splinted on wooden slats that prevented each of them from bending their elbows. How then did they manage to eat? I watched as someone picked up their spoon and dug it into the dish before them, then stretched across the table to feed the person across from them. The recipient of this kindness expressed their gratitude and returned the favor by leaning across the table to feed their benefactor. I suddenly understood. Heaven and hell offer the same circumstances and conditions. The critical difference is the way the people treat each other. And our modern reading is one you may be familiar with. The author is anonymous, and this shows up in, you may have seen it, heard it in this congregation, but it's often a very popular thread on Facebook and whatever the other things out there are. And it is a good one for the first Sunday of coffee hour in a while. This is the parable of the coffee cup, as I call it. You are holding a cup of coffee when someone comes along and bumps into you or shakes your arm. This makes you spill your coffee everywhere. Why did you spill the coffee? You spilled the coffee because there was coffee in your cup. Had there been tea in the cup, you would have spilled the tea. Whatever is inside of that cup is what will spill out. Therefore, when life comes along and shakes you, which will happen, whatever is inside you will come out. It is easy to fake it until you get rattled. So, we have to ask ourselves, what's in my cup? When life gets tough, what spills over? Joy, gratefulness, peace, and humility? Or is it anger, bitterness, harsh words, and reactions? Life provides the cup. You choose how to fill it. So that story, the parable of the coffee cup, reminds me of a time I was trying to park in a busy parking garage to make it on time for my on-call chaplain shift at a hospital. As I was trying to park, the one space I saw available was tricky to get into because the person next to that space had parked a little bit over the line. It was tedious, but I was able to safely park with adequate room on either side. Then, after a long shift, I came back to that parking spot and saw that that car that was parked over the line was gone. Somebody else was there parked and parked appropriately. However, I noticed that this time my car was over the line. And an awakening occurred for me as I wondered who I may have upset by that parking job. And also it made me wonder if the person who had parked over the line was just trying to fit in as we all make our way through hectic times. So these times have put a lot in our cups. Sometimes we don't always get to choose what lands in our cups. Sometimes we have every intent, but then it rains, or something happens and it's difficult to clean out or dump out the cups. The COVID-19 pandemic and other devastations of this time, I believe, are the symptom of something larger. And perhaps that something larger could be something like fear of the other. It is this kind of fear that has led to isolationism, bigotry, and an unjust distribution of resources. And that leads to scapegoating, false news even. So this created the conditions for a storm of denial, a hoarding of resources that allowed COVID to flourish. And not just COVID, but allowed other bigotries or other injustices to perpetuate. This global disease is no longer just theory for us. It is a reality as we faced our own hoarding of toilet paper or other resources. Community activities became literally dangerous and involved a great deal of tedious caution. And a simple act of solidarity with our neighbors became risky due to a possibility of violence or getting sick. The content of our cups were impacted. Many of us had an option to live in a bubble of sorts in which approaching social justice issues or hunger or inequality was an option that could be engaged when convenient. Now, our neighbor's suffering has direct consequences for our own lives. If our neighbors do not have what they need to protect themselves against COVID-19, we are at risk of getting infected. If they do not have the resources or for medical care or to quarantine properly, we are all more at risk. In today's reality, inequity of resources, education, and access to health care between communities right next to each other or even across the world is a threat to our own health. But this is just one symptom of this larger global disease. Though none of us are protected from the symptoms, some of us are more vulnerable than others. In recent history, people of color and the LGBTQIA+ communities have been hit hard by the consequences of this global disease. However, we have a vaccine of sorts for this global disease of fear of the other. I am biased towards this vaccine because it is one that means a lot to me. And that vaccine, I believe, are the practices and principles of our faith. So a vaccine, we know, especially the COVID vaccine, doesn't protect us from all the symptoms of COVID. It doesn't protect us from getting infected. However, it can protect us against the worst effects of the virus. I believe that solidarity with each other can help us to prevent against the isolations caused by fear. I have seen this community gather together in all kinds of creative ways, mostly virtual, over the past few years, in hopes that we can gather in person again and to hear in person our voices singing near each other again. And as Reverend Allen often reminds us, our Unitarian and Universalist forebears believed in the power of humanity to awaken and grow beyond old patterns of totalitarianism and become a little bit more equitable and inclusive. While we now advocate for causes that are beyond our forebears' imaginations, our values are something that we are still growing into, something we are still becoming. Our forebears also recognized that their beloved community was something they sought to become rather than who they were. And so that's good news for us. We don't have to be the perfect embodiment of UUism. We just have to strive towards it. For our values, our principles, are not about who we are. They're about who we desire to become. Our principles affirm the worth and dignity of everyone and call us to be mindful of each other and call us for that free and responsible search for truth and meaning in solidarity with those who are oppressed or blocked from their own searches. Any of us can take these principles and practices on our own, but it is powerful when they are engaged in community. And I saw an example of this. I used to be a middle school band director way back in the day. Maybe a couple decades ago. But anyway, one of the students asked me just to play one quarter note so that they could hear the sound of a quarter note and know how to play every single quarter note. So now, if I had asked Steve to play just one quarter note, that would be impossible, because a quarter note is only a quarter note in relationship to the other notes around it. It is at that same pace of other quarter notes. It is faster than some, slower than others, and also needs a few instructions musically as far as how it can exist. A meter of sorts, how fast it is to be played. And sometimes they lead, and sometimes they're just passing through. Or another example is colors. The color blue only exists in relationship to other colors. So if everything were shades of blue, that would actually morph to black and white. Blue only exists in relation to other colors. Likewise, the texture of these pews, if that were the only texture, our couches would be no relief. Well, maybe that's a bad example. So, for me, awakening involves discovering ourselves in relationship to the world around us. The practice of our faith is that of a metronome or a conductor or perhaps a color wheel that can help us find meaning in the chaos of our lives and awaken to the truest self through our encounters with each other and our practices. And we have the opportunity to spread this awakening by creating the space to allow all identities to discover each other in relationship to one another. A place where differences are an asset and not something to just overcome. So how is this a vaccine then? Perhaps it is through our faith's call to be awakened to interdependence. This implies that we are to be interdependent with one another. I have noticed that as a community, we are quick to offer support to each other. But every now and then, sometimes, we can be like a stubborn child who might hide a severe cut from a parent out of fear that cleaning that cut will hurt, or perhaps out of a feeling of shame that they will be scolded. That sound familiar to anybody? I know it does to my parents. They're sitting right here. However, when those cuts are hidden, the wounds are at risk of becoming infected. The same is true of the wounds of our heart. This global disease of fear of the other, or whatever it is, spreads when the wounds of our hearts become infected. When we have a trauma or a grief that overwhelms our ability to function, we can become at risk. Now, trauma and grief are something that we will all live with, and something that we are not protected from. However, if we can allow others to tend to the wounds of our heart, then this kind of awakening offers new life and possibilities. But it is also painful and scary. Just as a warming occurs as folks gather together in the cold, when we gather together through different ways, whether it's in person, whether it's tuning in online, a spiritual warming occurs. Just as the thawing of a broken limb, a frozen limb. So, you ever outside and your hands freeze and you can't feel anything? And then when they thaw, it hurts, and you feel every impact that hand had experienced while it was frozen. That's true as we gather together and a warming occurs. There's that warming of our hearts. And sometimes, as our hearts warm, we feel some emotions that we were previously numb to. And though that warming makes it especially important for us to be present in this community. And I am privileged to have seen this community do this over the years in a variety of creative ways. When in the worst of the pandemic, Reverend Allen often shared our experiences of isolation as that, or compared them to that of exile of the Israelites in Babylon. And as we are now moving from a community of exile, from a sacred space, we're moving to a diaspora of communities centered around a space and time that is made holy by the pursuit of our values, as we strive to become more loving and more present with each other. And we become more in tune with our own values. While I was undergoing my clinical pastoral education, so in order to become a chaplain, we have to do what's called a residency, or CPE, where we learn by doing. So we minister in usually a healthcare setting, and we have a group of peers that we report to and share our experiences with. And we write about our experiences. On one on-call shift, I was to write about my own theology of pastoral care, which was rather intimidating as a religious liberal among a fairly conservative group. I struggled with this, and that night's on-call was insane. And I didn't get any opportunity to write until 7 in the morning. But when that opportunity came, I realized that part of my own block in writing, besides being interrupted all the time by pages, was my own realization that I wasn't getting the benefit of my own theology. And what was stopping me? So I wrote a poem just really quick after almost no sleep. And so I'd like to share that with you. It is called Canvas. In a beautiful world, we have before us our own canvas, reflecting a light that comes down in flashes. It is pure and plain. Before it, we hold brushes and paints. I am told to try and paint with the beauty of the saints. But don't paint on my canvas, not my sister nor my brother. I see beauty all around me, but still cannot trust the other. How can I trust your skills when I cannot trust my own? So in paradise I stand, protected and alone. But I see them all around me, each painting the canvases of another. They paint one another's canvases with the tenderness of a feather, drawing its artful lines as through the wind it's wildly blown. They paint images of glory and passion with a beauty freshly sown. But don't paint on my canvas. Oh, I wish you could understand. I cannot recreate the splendor that shines throughout the land. If you paint beautifully on mine, then what to you can I return? I would rather leave you empty than with what my touch may burn. In earth's splendor, I am neither saint nor prophet. So to the saints, my brush and paint I now forfeit. I believe I cannot paint, that I do not qualify, and feel an obligation to leave that canvas pure and dry. So don't paint on my canvas. Its cost to me is priceless. Just leave it as it is, wholly pure and precious. I will protect it, keep it safe and colorless. No wrinkle, stain, nor rip will appear before us. I have seen other canvases stained and ruined. For my own protection, I'll keep myself locked in. I have seen them torn and battered and ripped before me. With your quick brushstrokes, can I trust you truthfully? So don't paint on my canvas, not my sister or my brother. I see violence done before me and cannot trust the other. So how can I trust your skills if I cannot trust my own? So in paradise I stand, protected and alone. Now a storm has blown in from behind a whirlwind, blowing paint and trash. The canvas now knows the pain of brokenness resulting from the crash. All over, a pure canvas ripped is now found lying on the ground, stained with many colors, running and splashed all around. No longer pure and flawless, the paints are scattered in a mess. I will try to restore it with simplicity and a broken brush's caress. The canvas, no longer bright but muddy, gray, runny, and unstable. Gently, humbly, I paint over tears as best as I am able. After violated, can purity still be achieved? I no longer feel protected as I once believed. Has trauma forever damaged what was pure and priceless? I will attempt to paint for the first time with the broken brushes caressed. Your painting on my canvas calls the voice of one, and for that I thank you. The voice brightens with the sun. I'm quick to realize that that canvas is not my own. As a hand paints my canvas from a tear, a flower has now grown. May this be true for this community, that our presences paint on the canvases of each other, the canvases with the paint of tenderness. May that empower this community of worship, mutual care, and faith formation to be a blessing of hope in these times that our own Reverend Allen refers to as liminal times, times of transition. May this community continue to bless the world by all of you being simply who you are. Thank you. In keeping with our covenant, we gather together with shared joys and sorrows. So many of the joys and sorrows on our hearts today, I recognize, are not included in the ones I will read aloud. So what I invite you to do at this moment is to take a deep breath. I know it's not as easy with masks on. And I ask that you hold the sorrows or joys of all in this community. And I do have a joy to share. This comes from Deb Grad, as she shares. Our first grandson was born on Sunday, March 27th, British Mother's Day, the best gift a daughter could give her English mummy. In Denver, Colorado, Graham Stone Hemming weighed in at 7 pounds and 4 ounces. Rebecca and Daddy Anthony are all doing well, and Deb and Brian are with them. May those who gather with sorrow find solace. May those who gather with a smile in their heart find a welcoming place to share and celebrate. May those we carry in our hearts today find tenderness and healing. Just as we gather, holding others close in our hearts, may we accept the love and care of those of this community who hold us close in their hearts. Let us breathe and sing together in solidarity with everyone here, in solidarity with those who cannot be here. We'll sing Spirit of Life. May we be awakened this season to that direct experience with that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. May we never lose our sense of wonder, and may our cups be filled with gratitude, giving us the strength to be ambassadors for a better world to be. Thank you all for being here, and if you are able, please do join us for coffee hour. This is very special. If you're not sure where it is, someone will be happy to escort you and show you where to go.